We finished up last week talking about matter and the idea that matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. And that matter comes in three different forms: solid, liquids, and gases. This week we're going to dive into matter and look at what are the components of matter, what makes up matter. Matter is going to be made up of smaller units called atoms. And atoms are going to then be made up of three smaller units yet called subatomic particles, which are protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now, if you look here at the picture, atoms are organized in two general areas. So you have this core here, which is called the nucleus, and then you have these orbits that kind of surround the nucleus. Inside this nucleus of this atom are going to be two of the three subatomic particles. There's going to be protons and there's going to be neutrons. Protons are these blue things that have a positive charge, and neutrons are subatomic particles found in the nucleus that have no charge. Floating around the nucleus then in these different orbits is the third of the three subatomic particles called electrons, and electrons have a negative charge. Electrons are actually the smallest of the three. Protons and neutrons are generally the same size, but electrons are significantly smaller. Now, the arrangement or the number of electrons, protons, and neutrons in any atom is going to give it very specific characteristics, and that leads us to elements. Elements are specific kinds of atoms with a very specific or fixed amount of protons in them. So the number of protons is going to give an element its identity. Okay, so elements are all the things that you see on the periodic table: carbon, hydrogens, oxygens, nitrogens. Those are all elements, and all of them have a very specific number of protons in them. Carbon has 6 protons. Hydrogen has 1 proton. Okay, lead, here's an example of lead. It has 82 protons. Lead can't have 81 because then it's a totally different compound. It can't have 80, then it's a totally different compound. Lead has to have 82 protons in it. Now, if you look at an element symbol here, these little boxes, again, that you would see on a periodic table, we can tell how many protons, electrons, and neutrons there are in any given element. Okay, so the first thing that an element symbol is going to show you or tell you, it's going to give you the name, which in this case is lead, and then it's also going to give you the scientific abbreviation for lead, which in this case is Pb. Usually it's based off of the Latin word for the element. Then there are two numbers, two important numbers. The first number is the atomic number, okay? The atomic number is going to give you the number of protons, remember, which had a positive charge to it. So lead has 82 protons. The second number, which is found down below, is the atomic mass, and this is going to be the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. So by using simple subtraction, we can figure out how many neutrons alone there are, right? So we would round, either round up or round down. So we would take 207. We know that there's 207 protons and neutrons combined, but we know that there are 82 protons. So by subtracting, we know now that there are 125 neutrons. Okay? So now we know the number of protons, now we know the number of neutrons. The last thing is going to be the number of electrons. Now remember that we're going to assume that this element is electrically neutral, meaning that there's no overall charge. So if we have 82 positively charged protons, in order to keep it neutral, we would need to have 82 of the negatively charged electrons, so that the number of negatives balances the number of positives. So again, just by looking at the symbol, we know number of protons, number of neutrons by doing simple subtraction, and then we assume that the number of electrons or negative charges is going to be the same as the number of electrons, as the number of protons, sorry. So an element symbol gives us all of that information about any of the different elements.